Hey, fellow witches and wizards, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating and complex characters in the wizarding world. A man whose very name strikes fear into the hearts of dark wizards everywhere. We're talking about Alastor, Mad-Eye Moody, the legendary Auror whose paranoia saved lives and whose dedication to justice became the stuff of legend. So grab your wands, keep your eyes peeled for dark arts, and let's uncover the incredible story of the wizard they called Mad-Eye. Let's start at the beginning of Mad-Eye's legendary career. Alastor Moody wasn't born paranoid. He was forged into the ultimate dark wizard hunter through years of facing the most dangerous criminals in the wizarding world. As an Auror for the Ministry of Magic, Moody dedicated his life to hunting down dark wizards, and let me tell you, he was exceptionally good at his job. Here's what makes Moody's career so remarkable. He personally filled half of the cells in Azkaban prison. Think about that for a moment. Half of the most dangerous dark wizards and witches were put behind bars by this one man. That's not just impressive, it's absolutely legendary. Moody didn't just catch petty criminals or minor dark arts practitioners. He went after the worst of the worst. The wizards who used unforgivable curses, who tortured and killed innocent people. But this level of success came at a price. Fighting dark wizards isn't like dueling in a classroom or practicing defensive spells. These were life or death situations, where one wrong move, one moment of letting your guard down, could mean torture, death, or worse. And Moody learned this lesson the hard way, over and over again. Fighting dark wizards for decades left Moody with scars that tell the story of his dedication. Let's talk about the physical toll this career took on him, because it's absolutely staggering. Moody lost his left eye, not in some freak accident, but in the line of duty, fighting dark wizards. But here's the thing about Moody. Instead of letting this disability slow him down, he turned it into an advantage. Enter the famous magical eye, a bright, electric blue sphere that could see through anything. And when I say anything, I mean anything. Invisibility cloaks, walls, the back of his own head. This eye was the ultimate surveillance device. Imagine being a dark wizard trying to ambush Moody, only to discover he could literally see you coming from any direction, through any obstacle. The eye never stopped moving, constantly scanning, always watching for threats. But that's not all. Moody also lost his left leg, again in the line of duty. He replaced it with a wooden prosthetic that clicked distinctively when he walked. That click became his signature sound. Death Eaters and dark wizards learned to fear that rhythmic clicking echoing through the halls, knowing that Mad-Eye Moody was coming for them. And let's not forget his nose. A chunk of it was missing, bitten off during one of his many confrontations with dark wizards. Every scar, every missing piece, every disability was a badge of honor, proof of his unwavering commitment to protecting innocent people from the forces of darkness. Now, let's talk about what made Moody truly unique among Aurors. His legendary paranoia. People called him Mad-Eye, not just because of his magical eye, but because of his seemingly excessive caution. But here's the thing. In Moody's line of work, paranoia wasn't madness, it was survival. Moody had a personal motto: constant vigilance. These weren't just words to him, they were a way of life. He never ate food, he didn't prepare himself, never drank from containers others had access to, and always assumed the worst-case scenario. Why? Because dark wizards are creative in their methods of attack. Poison, imperious curses, polyjuice potion, the threats were endless and often invisible. Let me give you some examples of Moody's precautions. He kept his magical eye active even while sleeping, constantly scanning for threats. He had multiple escape routes planned from every location he visited. He trusted virtually no one completely, always assuming that even allies could be compromised through curses, blackmail, or impersonation. And you know what? His paranoia was completely justified. During his career, he faced assassination attempts, ambushes, and elaborate traps designed specifically to kill him. Dark wizards didn't just want to defeat Moody. They wanted revenge for all their friends and allies he had captured. His constant vigilance literally kept him alive in a profession where most people don't survive long enough to collect a pension. Moody's true test came during the First Wizarding War against Voldemort and his Death Eaters. This wasn't just about catching individual dark wizards anymore. This was about facing an organized army of the most fanatical and dangerous dark wizards in history. And Moody stepped up to the challenge in a big way. Moody became a key member of the original Order of the Phoenix, the secret organization founded by Albus Dumbledore to fight Voldemort. But Moody wasn't content to just follow orders. He brought his decades of Auror experience to bear against the Death Eaters. His knowledge of dark wizard tactics, his understanding of how they thought and operated, made him invaluable to the Resistance. During this period, Moody's paranoia reached new heights, and for good reason. The Death Eaters had placed a price on his head. They wanted him dead more than almost any other member of the Order, because he had been personally responsible for capturing so many of their allies. Imagine living with the knowledge that some of the most dangerous wizards in history are actively plotting your assassination. That's the reality Moody faced every single day. But here's what's remarkable about Moody during this time. Despite being one of the most wanted men by the Death Eaters, despite constant death threats and assassination attempts, he never backed down. He continued fighting, continued capturing dark wizards, and continued protecting innocent people. His courage wasn't the flashy, heroic type. It was the quiet, determined courage of someone who does what's right, even when it's terrifying. Now we come to one of the most shocking events in Moody's entire career. An event that demonstrated both his importance to the wizarding world and the lengths to which his enemies would go to neutralize him. I'm talking about the incident involving Barty Crouch Jr. and Moody's impersonation during Harry Potter's 4th year at Hogwarts. Here's what happened. Barty Crouch Jr., one of Voldemort's most fanatical Death Eaters, was tasked with infiltrating Hogwarts to ensure Harry Potter would win the Triwizard Tournament and be transported to Voldemort for his resurrection ritual. But Crouch Jr. couldn't just show up at Hogwarts as himself. He needed cover, an identity that would give him access to Harry and the respect of the Hogwarts staff. So what did he do? He captured Alastor Moody, the most respected and feared dark wizard hunter in the wizarding world. Think about the audacity of this plan. Crouch Jr. didn't just want to impersonate any Auror. He specifically targeted Moody because Moody's reputation was so formidable that no one would question his presence or his methods. For nearly an entire school year, the real Moody was imprisoned in his own magical trunk, kept alive only so that Crouch Jr. could continue extracting hairs for Polyjuice Potion. Meanwhile, Crouch Jr. taught defense against the dark arts at Hogwarts, fooling not just the students, but also Albus Dumbledore and the entire Hogwarts staff. Let that sink in for a moment. A Death Eater successfully impersonated Mad-Eye Moody for months, and no one suspected anything. This tells us two things. First, it demonstrates just how dangerous and skilled Barty Crouch Jr. was as a Death Eater. But second, and more importantly, it shows us just how perfectly Crouch Jr. understood that Moody's paranoia and harsh teaching methods were completely in character. The fake Moody's behavior seemed perfectly normal for the real Mad-Eye, even though it was actually Barty Crouch Jr. in disguise. The teaching methods we witnessed during Harry's 4th year give us incredible insight into how the real Moody approached dark arts education. And let me tell you, his methods were as intense as you'd expect from someone who had spent decades fighting real dark wizards. The fake Moody demonstrated the 3 unforgivable curses to fourth-year students, something that was considered highly controversial by ministry standards. But here's the thing. Moody believed that you couldn't defend against something you didn't understand. How can you recognize the signs of someone about to cast the killing curse if you've never seen it performed? How can you fight off the imperious curse if you've never experienced its effects? This philosophy extended to all aspects of Moody's approach to dark arts defense. He believed in showing students the harsh realities of what they might face. No sugarcoating, no gentle introduction to the subject, just the brutal truth about what dark wizards could and would do to innocent people. The real Moody's teaching philosophy was summed up in his constant refrain: constant vigilance. He believed that the moment you let your guard down, the moment you assume you're safe, that's when dark wizards strike. This wasn't just paranoia speaking. This was hard-earned wisdom from someone who had seen too many good people die, because they weren't prepared for the reality of magical combat. Even his method of taking attendance was a lesson in vigilance. The magical eye constantly scanning the room, noting every student's position, watching for any sign of danger or deception. To Moody, every moment was a teaching opportunity about the importance of awareness and preparation. After his rescue from Crouch Jr.'s trunk, you might think Moody would retire, maybe take a desk job at the ministry, enjoy a quiet life after decades of service. But that's not who Mad-Eye Moody was. When Voldemort returned and the Second Wizarding War began, Moody immediately rejoined the Reformed Order of the Phoenix. Despite everything he had endured, the imprisonment, the impersonation, the psychological trauma of being trapped for months, Moody stepped right back into the fight. Why? Because he understood better than almost anyone what was at stake. He had spent his entire career fighting dark wizards, and he knew that Voldemort represented the ultimate threat to everything decent in the wizarding world. Moody brought his decades of experience to the new order, serving as both a strategic advisor and an active field operative. His knowledge of Death Eater tactics, his understanding of dark arts, and his network of contacts made him invaluable to the resistance effort. He wasn't just an old soldier coming out of retirement, he was a master craftsman returning to perfect his art. During this period, we see Moody participating in some of the most dangerous missions the Order undertook. He helped plan and execute operations against Death Eaters, provided security for Order meetings, and shared his expertise with younger members who were just learning to fight in this new war. And now we come to Mad-Eye Moody's final act, a mission that perfectly embodied everything he stood for as an Auror and as a member of the Order of the Phoenix. The plan was called the 7 Potters, and it was designed to safely transport Harry Potter from Privet Drive to the Burrow. The mission was incredibly dangerous. 7 people would take Polyjuice Potion to look like Harry, creating multiple targets to confuse any Death Eaters who might be waiting to ambush the real Harry. Moody was paired with Mundungus Fletcher, and their job was to serve as one of the decoy groups. Now, think about this for a moment. Moody could have assigned himself to escort the real Harry, or paired himself with a more reliable partner than Mundungus Fletcher. But that wasn't how Moody operated. He understood that every decoy pair was equally important to the mission's success, and he was willing to take the same risks as everyone else. During the mission, Moody and Fletcher were ambushed by Death Eaters. In the ensuing battle, Fletcher panicked and disapparated, leaving Moody to face multiple attackers alone. This was exactly the kind of situation Moody had prepared for his entire career. Outnumbered, outgunned, but still fighting to protect others, Mad-Eye Moody died as he had lived, fighting dark wizards, protecting innocent people, and refusing to back down even when the odds were impossible. His death was a devastating blow to the Order of the Phoenix, not just because they lost a skilled fighter, but because they lost a symbol of unwavering courage and determination. Moody's death marked the end of an era in the wizarding world. Here was a man who had dedicated his entire adult life to fighting dark wizards, who had sacrificed his body, his comfort, and ultimately his life in service to the cause of justice. But his legacy extended far beyond his personal achievements. Think about the impact Moody had on the wizarding world's approach to dark arts defense. His insistence on constant vigilance wasn't just a personal motto. It became a philosophy that influenced an entire generation of Aurors and defense against the dark arts practitioners. His methods might have seemed extreme, but they were proven effective by decades of successful operations. Moody also demonstrated something crucial about the nature of heroism. He wasn't a chosen one with a special destiny, he wasn't particularly charming or charismatic, and he didn't have any special magical abilities beyond his training and experience. What made him heroic was his absolute refusal to compromise. When it came to protecting innocent people from dark wizards, his paranoia, which many people mocked or found excessive, was actually a form of profound responsibility. Moody understood that other people's lives depended on his vigilance, and he was willing to sacrifice his own comfort and peace of mind to keep them safe. That's not madness, that's heroism in its purest form. Let's dive deeper into what made Moody tick, because his psychology is absolutely fascinating. On the surface, he appeared to be a paranoid, scarred veteran who trusted no one and saw threats everywhere. But when you really examine his behavior, you realize that his paranoia was actually a highly sophisticated risk assessment system developed over decades of high-stakes operations. Consider Moody's famous hip flask, from which he drank constantly. People assumed this was just paranoia, but think about the logic behind it. Dark wizards frequently use poison or potions to incapacitate their targets. By only drinking from his own flask, which presumably contained something he had prepared himself, Moody eliminated one of the most common attack vectors his enemies might use. His magical eye, constantly scanning in all directions, wasn't just about spotting immediate threats. It was about gathering intelligence, understanding his environment, and maintaining situational awareness at all times. In his line of work, the difference between life and death often came down to noticing something a split second before your opponent did. What's remarkable about Moody is that he managed to maintain this level of vigilance for decades without completely losing his humanity. Yes, he was suspicious and difficult to get close to, but he still cared deeply about protecting innocent people. He still formed relationships with his fellow Order members. He still found meaning and purpose in his work. Now let's talk about what made Moody so effective as an Auror. Because his success rate wasn't just due to paranoia and determination, Moody was a master tactician who understood dark wizard psychology better than almost anyone else in the wizarding world. Remember, Moody personally filled half the cells in Azkaban. That's not something you accomplish through luck or brute force. That requires an incredible understanding of how dark wizards think, how they operate, and how to predict their behavior. Moody had to be part detective, part psychologist, and part warrior to achieve that level of success. His magical eye gave him obvious tactical advantages, but Moody's real weapon was his mind. He could think like a dark wizard, anticipate their strategies, and always stay one step ahead. When other Aurors saw obvious traps, Moody saw the less obvious backup plans. When others trusted apparent allies, Moody verified their identities and motivations. Moody also understood that dark wizards relied heavily on deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare. They used fear, confusion, and false information as weapons just as much as curses and hexes. So Moody developed countermeasures for all of these tactics. His constant vigilance was as much about mental defense as physical protection. Despite his gruff exterior and paranoid tendencies, Moody was actually an effective mentor and teacher. We see this in his interactions with younger Order members and in the teaching methods he would have used at Hogwarts if he had actually taught there instead of being impersonated. Moody's approach to mentorship was tough love in the extreme. He believed that sugarcoating the dangers of fighting dark wizards would get people killed, so instead of gentle encouragement, he provided brutal honesty about what his students could expect to face. This wasn't cruelty, it was preparation for survival. His famous demonstration of the unforgivable curses, even though it was performed by his impersonator, reflected his teaching philosophy perfectly. You can't defend against something you don't understand, and you can't make informed decisions about the risks you're taking if you don't know what those risks actually are. Moody understood that in war, good intentions aren't enough. You need knowledge, preparation, and the mental toughness to make hard decisions under pressure. His harsh teaching methods were designed to build that mental toughness, to prepare his students for the psychological as well as physical challenges they would face. Let's take a moment to really consider what Moody's career cost him personally, because I think it's important to understand the human price of his heroism. Moody spent decades fighting the worst people in the wizarding world, seeing humanity at its most evil and depraved. That takes a toll that goes far beyond physical injuries. Think about the isolation that came with his level of paranoia. Moody couldn't trust anyone completely, couldn't relax his guard, couldn't enjoy simple pleasures like sharing a meal with friends without worrying about poison. His magical eye never stopped moving, never stopped scanning for threats, even in supposedly safe situations. He lost friends and colleagues to dark wizards throughout his career. Every successful mission was balanced against the knowledge that somewhere another dark wizard was planning their next attack. Every criminal he captured was replaced by another recruit to the forces of darkness. It must have sometimes felt like fighting an endless war against an enemy that could never be completely defeated. And yet, despite all of this, despite the physical pain, the psychological stress, and the social isolation, Moody never gave up. He never decided that the fight wasn't worth it, never chose personal comfort over public safety. That level of self-sacrifice is almost impossible to comprehend. Even though Harry Potter never actually studied under the real Mad-Eye Moody, Moody's influence on Harry's development as a wizard and as a person was significant. The lessons Harry learned from the fake Moody, who was channeling the real Moody's methods and philosophy, proved crucial to his survival throughout the series. The demonstration of the unforgivable curses, for example, gave Harry crucial knowledge about the most dangerous dark arts. When Harry later faced these curses in real combat situations, he knew what to expect because he had seen them performed and understood their effects. This knowledge quite literally saved his life multiple times. But more than just technical knowledge, Harry absorbed Moody's philosophy of constant vigilance. Throughout the later books, we see Harry becoming more suspicious, more careful about trusting people, more aware of potential threats. This wasn't paranoia, it was appropriate caution given the dangers he faced. Moody's influence also extended to Harry's understanding of what it means to fight against dark wizards. The fake Moody's harsh lessons about the realities of magical combat prepared Harry psychologically for the brutal choices he would have to make. When Harry later had to use unforgivable curses himself, he understood their weight and significance because of what he had learned in that classroom. One of the most fascinating aspects of Moody's story is how successfully Barty Crouch Jr. was able to impersonate him. This tells us an enormous amount about Moody's personality and reputation. Because Crouch Jr.'s performance had to be so accurate that it fooled even Albus, Crouch Jr. didn't just have to look like Moody thanks to Polyjuice Potion, he had to act like him, think like him, and respond to situations the way Moody would respond. The fact that he pulled this off for nearly an entire school year suggests that Moody's behavior patterns were consistent and predictable to someone who had studied him carefully. This also tells us that Moody's paranoid behavior and harsh teaching methods weren't just personal quirks. They were so fundamental to his character that anyone trying to impersonate him would have to adopt them completely. The fake Moody's constant vigilance motto and his demonstration of dangerous curses weren't exaggerations. They were accurate representations of how the real Moody would have behaved. What's particularly interesting is that Crouch Jr.'s impersonation was so good that it actually served Moody's purposes. The lessons Harry learned, the knowledge he gained about dark arts defense, and the mental preparation he received for the challenges ahead, all of this happened because Crouch Jr. understood that effective impersonation required him to be an effective teacher in Moody's style. Let's talk about the tools of Moody's trade. Because his collection of dark arts detection equipment and defensive items was legendary among Aurors, these weren't just random magical objects. They were carefully chosen tools that reflected his approach to staying alive in a very dangerous profession. His magical eye was obviously his most famous piece of equipment, but it was far from his only defensive tool. Moody carried multiple dark arts detectors, devices that could sense the presence of concealed dark objects, hidden curses, and dangerous magical auras. These tools allowed him to sweep locations for threats before entering, giving him crucial advance warning about potential dangers. His hip flask wasn't just paranoia, it was a carefully designed survival tool. By maintaining his own supply of liquid and only drinking from sources he controlled, Moody eliminated one of the most common ways dark wizards incapacitate their targets. The flask probably contained not just safe liquid, but also antidotes and medical potions he might need in emergency situations. Moody's magical trunk, where he was eventually imprisoned by Barty Crouch Jr., was itself a masterpiece of defensive magic. Multi-compartmented, heavily warded, and secured with multiple locks and protective charms, this wasn't just storage, it was a portable fortress that could serve as a safe house, armory, and escape route, all in one. One aspect of Moody's character that often gets overlooked is his brilliant, strategic mind. His paranoia wasn't random or irrational. It was the product of decades of tactical thinking and risk assessment. Every precaution he took, every suspicious behavior he exhibited, was based on careful analysis of potential threats and vulnerabilities. Consider how Moody approached the Seven Potters mission. He understood that the plan's success depended on every participant being equally committed to the deception. He knew that Death Eaters would be looking for signs of which Harry was real, and he designed his part of the mission to maintain the illusion even under extreme pressure. Moody's ability to think several steps ahead of his opponents was legendary. When other Aurors saw an obvious ambush, Moody was already planning countermeasures for the backup ambush he suspected was waiting. When others trusted apparent allies, Moody was verifying their identities and preparing for the possibility of betrayal. Their strategic thinking extended to his teaching methods as well. The harsh lessons, the brutal honesty, the emphasis on constant vigilance, all of this was designed to prepare students for the psychological and tactical challenges they would face when fighting dark wizards. Moody understood that technical knowledge wasn't enough. You also needed the right mindset. Despite his paranoid tendencies and difficulty trusting people, Moody formed deep loyalties and meaningful relationships throughout his career. His commitment to the Order of the Phoenix and his respect for Albus Dumbledore were absolute. Even though he maintained his characteristic caution in all his interactions, what's remarkable about Moody's relationships is how they balanced his need for vigilance with genuine human connection. He worked closely with other Order members, shared intelligence and resources, and put his life on the line to protect them. But he did all of this while maintaining the survival habits that had kept him alive for decades. His mentorship relationships were particularly interesting. Moody was willing to share his knowledge and experience with younger Aurors and Order members, but he never let sentiment override his judgment about their capabilities and limitations. He prepared them for the harsh realities they would face, even if it meant being unpopular or seeming cruel. Moody's loyalty to Dumbledore was especially significant, because it showed that he could overcome his natural suspicion. When he encountered someone who had truly earned his trust, this wasn't blind faith. It was the considered judgment of someone who had spent decades evaluating people's character and motivations. Constant vigilance wasn't just a catchphrase for Moody, it was a complete worldview that shaped every aspect of his life and career. Let's explore what this philosophy really meant and why it was so central to his effectiveness as an Auror and as a member of the Order of the Phoenix. At its core, constant vigilance was about taking responsibility for your own survival and the safety of those around you. Moody understood that in his line of work. Complacency kills. The moment you assume you're safe, the moment you let your guard down, that's when your enemies strike. This wasn't paranoia, it was a realistic assessment of the threats he faced. But constant vigilance went beyond just personal safety. It was about maintaining awareness of the broader strategic situation, understanding how individual actions fit into larger patterns, and always thinking about the consequences of your decisions. Moody didn't just react to immediate threats, he anticipated them and prepared countermeasures in advance. This philosophy also extended to how he evaluated information and made decisions. Moody never took anything at face value, never assumed that obvious explanations were correct, and never trusted first impressions. He verified everything, questioned everything, and always looked for hidden motives and concealed threats. As we wrap up our deep dive into Mad-Eye Moody's incredible life and career, let's consider the lasting impact he had on the wizarding world. His death during the Battle of the Seven Potters was more than just the loss of a skilled Auror. It marked the end of an era, and the beginning of a new chapter in the fight against dark wizards. Moody's influence on wizarding law enforcement continued long after his death. His methods, his philosophy of constant vigilance, and his uncompromising approach to dark arts investigation became standard practice for Aurors throughout the wizarding world. He didn't just catch dark wizards, he revolutionized how they were caught. But perhaps more importantly, Moody demonstrated that heroism doesn't always look heroic from the outside. He wasn't charming or charismatic, he didn't give inspiring speeches, and he certainly wasn't easy to like. But his absolute dedication to protecting innocent people from dark wizards made him one of the most important heroes in wizarding history. Moody's story teaches us that sometimes the most important work is done by people who are willing to sacrifice their own comfort, their own safety, and their own popularity for the greater good. His paranoia seemed excessive to outsiders, but it was the price he paid for keeping other people alive. Think about what the wizarding world would have looked like without Mad-Eye Moody. Half the cells in Azkaban would have been empty, meaning half of the most dangerous dark wizards in history would have remained free to terrorize innocent people. The Order of the Phoenix would have lacked his tactical expertise and strategic thinking. Harry Potter would have been less prepared for the challenges he faced. So, there you have it. The complete story of Alastor Mad-Eye Moody, the legendary Auror whose dedication to justice shaped the wizarding world for generations, from his early career filling half the cells in Azkaban, through his battles with Death Eaters, to his final sacrifice during the Seven Potters mission. Moody embodied the very best of what it means to stand against darkness. His magical eye may have stopped moving, his wooden leg may have stopped clicking through the halls of the Ministry, but his philosophy of constant vigilance lives on. Every Auror who checks for concealed dark arts before entering a room, every wizard who questions suspicious behavior, Instead of ignoring it, every person who chooses difficult preparation over easy complacency, they're all following in Mad-Eye Moody's footsteps. Moody's life reminds us that heroism often comes at great personal cost, that protecting others sometimes requires sacrificing your own peace of mind, and that true vigilance means never assuming the fight is over. His scars told the story of his dedication. His paranoia was the price of his effectiveness, and his sacrifice was the final proof of his character. In a world where dark wizards still lurk in the shadows, where evil still threatens the innocent, we could all benefit from remembering Mad-Eye Moody's most important lesson. Constant vigilance isn't just a motto. It's a way of life that keeps the darkness at bay. What did you think of Mad-Eye Moody's incredible story? Which aspect of his career impressed you the most? His legendary capture rate, his tactical brilliance, or his unwavering dedication to protecting others? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to learn more about the brave witches and wizards who fought against the forces of darkness, make sure to check out our other deep dives into Order of the Phoenix members. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed learning about the ultimate Auror. Subscribe for more magical deep dives, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest content. Remember, constant vigilance applies to staying updated with our channel too. Until next time, keep your wands ready, your eyes peeled for dark arts, and as Mad-Eye Moody would say, constant vigilance. Thanks for watching, and may your magical eye never stop turning.